Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Allison.
And this is Nerd of the Week, a randomly generated fandom podcast. Allison, what is our next word? Generator?
Don't ask me.
I could have phrased that better.
We gotta ask the generator.
Generator, forgive me, I am not worthy. Generator, remind everyone what our word is this week.
The word of the week is jam.
Jam! Alright, I have Google's definitions, multiple, of jam.
Okay, I think I have multiple definitions to guess.
Okay.
I think the first one is a noun, and I think it is a prepared and sweetened fruit preserve that can be spread easily and saved for long periods of time. That's my first answer.
Okay.
And then my second answer is also a noun, and
Okay.
it would be a party of sorts, potentially.
A party of sorts.
A party of sorts.
A jam, if you will.
Yes. Yes, we're just going to the royal jam. And then I think I can think of another one as well.
Yeah, go for it. There's a lot, actually.
Which would be a verb, what I can think of, which is to squeeze something into a space that it maybe shouldn't go into.
Yeah, all right.
Like, we're gonna jam our foot in the door.
Yep. So, the first one is actually jam with a asterisk 2 after it? Question mark? I'm confused as to the yeah. So they've got two different jams. They're spelled the same, and then there's jam with superscript with the number 1, and then jam superscript with the number 2. And okay. I don't know what is the difference. Because the first one has a verb and a noun definition, and then the second one just has the noun definition, which is the food. And then also apparently it's there's a third one that is an abbreviation for Jamaica. Supposedly.
Well, I certainly didn't bring that as the definition.
So jam superscript 1 has verb, which is, you were very close, squeeze or pack tightly into a specified space, or to push something roughly and forcibly into position or space.
Nice.
Then there is the improvise with other musicians, especially in jazz or blues.
Okay.
Then we have a noun. I like the noun is noun, jam. Plural noun, jams. Noun, jam session. Plural noun, jam sessions.
Not jams session?
Jams sessions. And they have an instance or machine, or an instance of a machine or thing seizing or becoming stuck.
Oh gosh.
Like a traffic jam, or a paper jam. Also an awkward situation or a predicament, because I'm in a jam.
It's a real jam.
It's a real jam. I was not expecting this many definitions of jam.
This is a lot.
And then the improvised music session, and then jam subscript 2 is a sweet spread or preserve made from fruit and sugar boiled to a thick consistency. And their example is just the word strawberry jam.
The quintessential example.
The quintessential example, strawberry jam. And the origin is early 18th century, probably symbolic. Compare with jam or cram.
Okay.
Why cram? This is a rabbit hole. Because to me, cram is like it's forcing information into your brain or studying forever.
Yeah.
Not some form of jam. But maybe there's some old Germanic origins that I'm not aware of because I am not a linguist.
Nor am I. But this was a good, fun dictionary reading session. I appreciate all the various definitions.
It was quite enlightening. Also, Google gives me on the right-hand side, when you have the definition stuff, of nutrition facts for some jam. It says jam spread. The ideal temperature is 220 degrees Fahrenheit. The average price is between $3 and $4 a jar. It has 26 ways to use jars of marmalade, sorry. The pros and cons of jam. And then, like, a straight up, like, label nutrition pack, 1 tablespoon is 56 calories and has 3% vitamin C.
It's not a lot of vitamin C. You need a lot more of that in your daily nutritional balance.
Right.
But okay. I guess one cannot survive on jam alone.
I like that it's just like unspecified jam. Here's some possible nutrition facts from the USDA, maybe. Because it says sources include ... USDA ?
Oh, goodness. This is the sketchiest jam that I've ever heard of. Suspicious jam.
Like, it doesn't have a type of jam in front of it, so we just assume that all jam has 10 grams of sugar. I wonder if there's, like, a minimum amount of things that you need to be considered jam as opposed to something else. Oh, like a jelly.
Well, I feel like jelly is more like it's filtered, so there's not little chunks in it, whereas when I think of jam, I think of, like, we might get, like, a chunk of strawberry along with it.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Or, like, grape jelly. That always seems to be real smooth. You never have grape jam.
Right. But I feel like you add, like, pectin or something into jelly. And jams tend to be, like, looser, where jellies are kind of more of, like, a Jell-O type consistency. Where
That's a good point. Because my parents were making grape jelly the other day with some wild grapes they found in their subdivision. They did have to add pectin or gelatin, something to it to get the jelly.
Okay.
It didn't work though, so I think they did end up with grape jam, if such a thing can possibly exist.
Grape jam. I believe grape jam exists. Now I'm going down another rabbit hole.
This is such a rabbit hole. Just forget the rest of the episode. We're just going to talk about definitions.
Discuss jam. If you just Google grape jam, old-fashioned grape jam, no pectin added, practical self-reliance. Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Practical
So there is
self-reliance.
I just think grape jelly, but maybe that's just peanut butter and jelly and, like, is kid memories. And I am an uncultured swine, so it's okay.
Yeah, I'd probably call anything in the aisle with fruit preserves, I'd just interchange jam and jelly with any of them.
All right, 8 minutes later. If you know the difference, tweet at us or tell us on Facebook. Because this is a rabbit hole I was not prepared to go down today.
But I'm so glad we did.
Same.
All right, so do you want to tell me what you actually came prepared to talk about?
I do. I am talking about Spaceballs.
Ooh, fun.
Have you seen Spaceballs?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. It is a Mel Brooks movie, written and directed by Mel Brooks, 1987, the space opera parody of Star Wars. It is a parody of the original Star Wars trilogy. I believe it might just be the first movie. And it also has some hints of Star Trek in there, a little bit of Alien. I think there's a Planet of the Apes scene toward the end of the movie, 2001 Space Odyssey, Wizard of Oz. There's a bunch of just like that 80s genre of sci-fi just parodied in this movie, but primarily it is Star Wars.
Okay.
Film stars Bill Pullman, John Candy, Rick Moranis, and it's got...
I've heard all those names before.
Yeah, they're pretty big names, and I think they're in a lot of the Mel Brooks, like, discography when he was making a bunch of stuff, one right after another, with all of his fun, goofy movies. Good cast.
The Mel Brooks gang.
Yeah, right. And it follows our heroic mercenary Lone Star and his alien sidekick Barf, or Bartholomew. And
how do you spell that?
BARF, exactly how you think.
Okay.
It's a joke that's made several times where they like barf, like they're gonna barf, and then they're just actually calling for barf. It's one of their more lowbrow jokes.
Okay.
But he's a parody of Chewbacca, and he is a half dog, half man, Mog, and he is his own best friend. And he's played by John Candy, and it's excellent. And then Lone Star is played by Bill Pullman and is very clearly a parody of Harrison Ford or Han Solo in Star Wars. And so open up. You have the Spaceball 1, which is this big ship that's lurking through space. And aboard you have a sergeant telling Colonel Sanders, Sandurz, that the planet Duridia is in sight. And the fearsome Lord Dark Helmet, who is a clear parody of... oh god, I've lost his name. Crap. Darth Vader. How did I forget Darth Vader? I am not a good nerd. Oh, crap.
That's very funny.
Oh, God, my brain's melting. Lord Dark Helmet, Darth Vader parody played by the great Rick Moranis. And they've been told that he's approaching the ship. Or he's approaching the ship bridge as they are getting close to Duridia. And Helmet tells President Scroob, Skroob, played by none other than Mel Brooks himself, that they are getting close, and they lay out the plan right at the beginning of the movie, where the planet Duridia is surrounded by this shield that protects 10,000 years of fresh air in it or something like that. And so there's like this plastic bubble around the planet to protect the air as opposed to like the atmosphere or whatever. And their plan is to suck up all the air so that they can bring it back to Spaceball Planet, because Spaceball Planet is slowly running out of air, and they have like none left whatsoever. And so they're like making it very clear what the bad guys' intentions are. And then they turn straight to the camera and break the fourth wall, and they're like, got it? Good. This is the plot of the movie. Which I think is a commentary on the fact that we really don't know why the Imperials in the original Star Wars movie are doing what they're doing. They're just kind of the general bad guys. Mm-hmm. And so they're laying it out. We are stealing air from a planet, and that is the plan. And part of it is that they are going to kidnap the planet's Princess Vespa. And
Vespa.
Uh-huh. And her father is King Roland. And so the plan was to, on her wedding day, kidnap her so that they could bargain her for the air on the planet as they were flying away on her honeymoon ship, which is some fancy, like, rich car that I don't know cars well enough to tell you what kind of car it is. But instead of having, like, mostly spaceships, they have just cars with wings on them. And
her name is Vespa?
And her name is Vespa.
It's like calling someone Toyota.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of I believe that is part of the joke.
Okay.
Yeah. So they tell Scroob that they are getting close, and then Helmet requests to see Duridia on the radar, and Colonel Sanders shows him towards the radar, and Helmet goes, no, I know where it is. And then he walks over and like demands to see it on the radar, and he doesn't understand. He's like, no, this is Mr. Coffee. It gives us coffee. And then it's like a coffee machine. And there's a long running joke that anytime there was a leftover styrofoam cup from one of the cast or crew on set, that Bill Moranis would just pick it up and start drinking out of it. And he did it so often that Mel Brooks just added it into the movie because he couldn't stop it. So they just threw that in there as a part of the movie where it was like, all right, fine. There's just styrofoam cups everywhere on the Spaceball one. And so then he's drinking and he's like, yeah, no, I totally know what that is. Take me to the actual radar machine, because I know what that looks like. I totally know what that looks like. And then Sergeant Rico goes, yes, it's right here. And then they step 2 feet to the left and there is Mr. Radar, and it's a radar screen, and it shows, like what you'd think of like a sonar map with like a little blip of Duridia. And he goes, no, I want to see it in like 3D. And then they turn it on, and then we cut to the, first intergalactic temple of the Druids, in parentheses, reformed, with Vespa and her father talking about how she doesn't want to marry Prince Valium. And he...
these are great names.
It's such a good movie. And then they have the C3PO stand-in Dot Matrix, voiced by Joan Rivers, as she comes in to be her like maid of honor for the movie, or for the wedding. And Vespa's like, but I don't love him. And then you see Prince Valium standing at the front of the altar, and he's like passed out, like totally not interested, does not want to be here situation. And Vespa gets cold feet and runs away. And she ends up taking the car that was for their like honeymoon, and she and Dot go in the car, and then they take off out of the atmosphere, running away from the wedding.
It's a great place to go to run away from the wedding, out of the atmosphere.
Into space with no other plans, having never left a planet in your life. Just go to space. It's fine. Meanwhile, our heroes, Lone Star and his co-pilot Barf, are flying on their Winnebago, which is...
No, they're not.
They have a Winnebago. It is a 1986 Winnebago Chieftain that flies through space. And it's their spacecraft for the entire movie.
Oh, God.
And they are rocking out to some music. And then they receive a call from Pizza the Hutt, and who is the Jabba the Hutt stand-in. And he demands the 1 million space bucks that they owe him. And he has 24 hours or 48 hours or something to get it back to them. Otherwise, he's going to turn them into pizza cheese. And
wow.
Lone Star is like, oh crap, what are we gonna do? And so that's kind of our motivation for our heroes, is that they owe Pizza the Hutt a bunch of money, and so they have to find something quick. Then we go back to Vespa and Dot, and they get out into the atmosphere, out into space, and the Spaceball 1 kind of lurks up behind them and puts them into the tractor beam. And he calls down to, or Lord Helmet calls down to Roland saying, I have your daughter, this, that, and the other thing. We're going to kidnap her, and we're going to steal all your air. So Roland calls Lone Star on his telecommunicator thing and goes...
Does it have a fancy name?
It probably does, and I just don't remember it.
Must not be that good, then.
It's really just a drop-down TV for plot device.
Okay.
And it's just one of those, like, Lord, it's the help me Obi-Wan, you're my only hope line in the movie, except for it's from Roland and not Leia. And, which I realize I'm saying all of this stuff and you've never seen Star Wars, so I don't know if that's helpful or not.
I've seen a little bit of Star Wars.
Okay.
I don't know that particular line. I've seen a little bit of Star Wars.
It's kind of the quintessential, like, beginning of the movie where R2-D2 goes up to Obi-Wan and then, Luke finds it.
The problem is I've never seen the beginning of the movies. I've only seen the ends.
Luke finds R2-D2 at the beginning of the movie, and R2-D2 has a recording of Leia that just repeats over and over, help me Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. And that's why Luke goes to find Obi-Wan, because he's like, I wonder if he means old Ben Kenobi. And then they go, and that's how he interacts with him. So that's the beginning of Star Wars.
Wow, it all makes more sense now. Okay.
So Lord Roland asks Lone Star and Barf to save his daughter, and they're like, well, will you pay us for it? And he goes, yeah, anything you want. And he goes, 1 million space bucks? And they're like, yes, I will do that. And they're like, we have a way to win. We can pay off Pizza the Hut. We can rescue a princess. We'll be heroes. And then we won't be turned into pizza cheese. Win-win all around.
Mm-hmm. Sounds too good to be true.
Mm-hmm. Well, shenanigans ensue. They go to find Vespa and the ship that's being pulled in by the tractor beam, and they realize that it's the Spaceball 1 that has kidnapped Vespa, and they're like, crap, we can't fight Lord Helmet, this isn't gonna work. Like, they can pick us up on radar, and then the line comes, well, what if we jam the radar, which is where the word jam comes in. And they pull down like a telescope thing that you would see in like a submarine, and they go, all right, the radar has been jammed. And then there's a disc radar like you would do for like television, and then a actual jar of jam hits the radar and then explodes, and there's just jam everywhere. and then the next scene is Helmet and Colonel Sanders and Rico all like looking at their radar, like they've seen that they haven't picked up Vespa, or like the Vespa's getting away, and they're trying to see her on radar, and then the jam is leaking through their radar machine.
Oh.
And so then Helmet lifts up his helmet and like takes a little bit of the jam and sticks it in his mouth, and he goes, raspberry. The only person who would give me a raspberry is Lone Star.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of stupid food puns in this movie. There's an actual line with Colonel Sanders, and it took me into like my last watch through of it to understand this one, but Helmet goes to Colonel Sanders, what are you, chicken? And I'm like, oh, I get it now. It's the fast food restaurant. Oh my God, I'm an idiot.
Oh my God.
So after they jam the radar ship, they grab Vespa. My favorite bit of this whole thing is that they take the Winnebago over the fancy car that Vespa and Dot are in, lower a ladder. Barf just straight up in the vacuum of space just climbs down the ladder, opens the door, and goes, come on, ladies, we're gonna save you. And then they just climb back up in the vacuum of space, back up into the Winnebago with all of Princess Vespa's luggage. And it just cracks me up every time. And then they start to fly off, and the tractor beam pulls in the ship finally, and Helmet has this long speech about how he's going to take all the air and there's no escape and the Empire, blah, 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 blah. And then he opens up the car door and there's no one in there, and he was like, Lone Star! And then they run to the front of the ship and they see them like disappearing off into the distance. So they're like, crap, we're not going to catch up to them. We need to go to ludicrous speed. Not warp speed, but ludicrous speed, which is 2 steps above whatever the other speeds are. And they're like, sir, we can't go to ludicrous speed. We don't even know if the ship can handle it. And he's like, no, we need to go to ludicrous speed. So then they engage ludicrous speed as they fly after the Winnebago and Lone Star and the crew. And then what you see is it's kind of the asteroid scene where they pretend to hide on like some debris in Star Wars as the Spaceball 1 goes flying past them, and then they drop out of warp speed. And it's never really clear if the Winnebago can hit ludicrous speed, but it's just indicated that it might be able to hit ludicrous speed. And then they see the Spaceball 1 kind of going and like way too fast, and it goes to plaid, and there's just like this plaid lighting that colors Barf and Lone Star as they're like, what is happening to this ship?
Plaid. My goodness.
And then Helmet realizes that they've passed the target, and then he orders the ship to stop, and then they crash. And he did not wear his seatbelt like everyone told him to.
But
and
he
so
had a helmet.
But he did have a helmet. It was a good thing he was wearing his helmet because his head rammed into a control panel and then dented the helmet. And then they were like, Lord Helmet, are you okay? And he's like, yes. Everyone should take a 5-minute break. And then he just falls over.
Oh my goodness.
And then, so they have escaped from the Spaceballs, but then the Winnebago runs out of fuel and crash lands onto a nearby moon known as Vega. And Lone Star and Vespa start to fight over everything just because, like, they're in this situation and now they've crash landed on a planet that's a desert and they might not be able to get out of it. And then Vespa's like, I can't leave without my luggage, so we need to go with my luggage. And it's like an absurd amount of stuff. Like, there's like 3 trunks and a backpack and a rolly wheel thing and all this stuff. So they're going into a fight about it. And Barf eventually talks some sense into them and like, look, we need to go find some gas, so let's just go. They start hauling Vespa's luggage around. At some point, Barf and Lone Star like put down one of the trunks and they're like, what even is in here? And they open it and it's an industrial hairdryer that's like the size of a small car. And they're like, why do you need this? And she's like, because my hair needs industrial strength. And they're like, but why?
It's important.
It's very important. She needs her industrial strength hairdryer. And then, unfortunately, they start to fight again because Lone Star finds this ridiculous. And Barf is like, why don't we find a place to camp? It's getting dark and let's just stop fighting right now. And then, Spaceballs, we go back to the Spaceballs and they're now searching for the Winnebago, and Colonel Sanders suggests that they check the video cassette of Spaceballs. And Lord Helmet goes, but we're making the movie right now. How would we be able to see the movie if we're in the process of making it? And he's like, but it's this new home technology where cassettes are already in stores before the movie's finished. So we can just fast forward and then we can just see where they are. And then, so they open up a shelf in the ship and it's just got like all of Mel Brooks movies in there. And then they're like, well, that's stupid, as Rico is going through, and then he pulls it out. He goes, I found it. So then they start playing the movie. And so then they like fast forward through the scene where Laura Helmet like crashes into ludicrous speed. And he's like, just go past that. That's fine. And then they get to now in the movie, at that moment in the movie. And then there's this cool scene where you see them watching a movie. And Lord Helmet's really confused and he's like, where are we? Or what is this? Well, this is now. Well, what happened to then? Well, that was then. We've missed it. But okay, so what about now? Well, we are in now. And so how do we get to then? Well, then we fast forward.
Wow, it's like time travel.
And then Sanders and Helmet are fighting over it, but then Rico shouts, hey, I found it. And he knows where they've crash landed on the planet because he's fast forwarded enough that he knows that they're in the desert, Vega. So then they know to go to Vega to go find them.
All right.
Because how else are we going to find the heroes except for cheating? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Lone Star is telling Vespa of his life origins, where he was found on a monastery doorstep after being born somewhere in the Ford galaxy. And he shows her a necklace that he's had his whole life, but he doesn't know what it means. And she looks at it, and it's like this coin with some writing on it. And then Vespa tells him that she ran away from her wedding because she wanted to get away from Prince Valium because he didn't love her, and she just wanted to love the groom. But she regrets her actions, knowing that because she's a princess, she's doomed to never love and she needs to just rule her people. And then there's like 5 or 6 scenes where they just keep looking at each other and like making googly eyes at each other. And then right as they're going into kiss, Dot wakes up because her virgin alarm goes off. And then she's like, nope, not until marriage. And then like cuts them off and like pulls Dot away and starts screaming at Lone Star about being a scoundrel. And they get embarrassed and start to walk away. And the scene goes into the next morning where Lone Star and Barf are saying that they need oil or they need water, and then Dot saying she needs oil, and Vespa is just begging for room service, and everyone collapses. And they're woken up by these small, like, fairy type creatures known as the Dinks, and all they can say are the word dink. And they wake them up with some water and then start to like cool them off and be like, follow us, and lead them through the desert. And they end up in this kind of like underground desert cavern that has the visage of the fabled Yogurt. And Yogurt is clearly supposed to be Yoda. And he is the keeper of the power known as the Schwartz. And he was in the desert, and he is also played by Mel Brooks. And everyone's like, oh my God, it's Yogurt. We can't believe it. And so they're like, oh, you've heard of me. And they're like, yeah. And they keep giving like a plethora of all of the things that Yogurt is known to or have said to have done. And then Yogurt's like, yeah, that was me. I'll take care of you. It's cool. And then he points to Lone Star and says that Lone Star has some hidden powers of the Schwartz inside of him, and proceeds to teach him about the Schwartz. And then there's a short scene where Yogurt shows them a bunch of Spaceball merchandise that they're planning on selling, because that's going to make them the real bucks, not the movie itself. But all of the, like, there's a cute little Yogurt doll, and then like some Schwartz rings, and then t-shirts and all that stuff. And that's how they're going to make their money. Meanwhile, the Spaceball 1 reports back to Spaceball City, where Scroob is upset that they didn't capture Vespa the first time, and tells them that they need to comb the desert. And they end up literally doing that. And I'm sure you've seen it as a meme, but there's guys just taking like giant combs and then running it through the desert. And they're like, have you found anything? No. Have you found anything? No. And it's like a bunch of people just like right next to each other taking a comb and combing sand. And then the last guy like zooms in on him and he's like, we ain't found shit. And then Colonel Sanders asks Helmet, are we taking this too literally? And he's like, nope, we're just following orders. They told us to comb the desert. That's what we're doing.
Yes, they are.
We then go back to Lone Star showing his necklace to Yogurt, who says he can read it, but it's not the right time to tell him what the necklace says. But he shows Lone Star how to use the Schwartz and gives him the ring that apparently is like the MacGuffin that lets you channel Schwartz energy. And he like lifts the statue of Yogurt and accidentally drops it on Barf's foot. Oh, and no. Barf's foot gets like flattened out and he like hobbles away. And then Lord Helmet lands because he feels the Schwartz power and he knows Yogurt might be on this planet. So he's like, oh crap, we gotta find them before Yogurt gets to them. And then they find the cave, and so Lord Helmet uses the Jedi mind trick kind of thing of your father is calling to you to Vespa and being like, just come home. Would I lie to you? Of course it's me. It's your dad, King Roland. And so then Vespa comes out and she runs up to him, and then the illusion of him being her father just turns him into Lord Helmet, and she just faints. And she's like, oh no, I've been deceived, and then just falls over. And then she and Dot then get captured and get drawn back to the Spaceball 1. Then Lone Star and Barf see them getting taken away, so then they get back on the Winnebago after getting some gas from Yogurt, and Yogurt gives Lone Star a fortune cookie and assures them that they will meet in Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money, and then, he gives him the ring saying he might need it, and then you see Lord Helmet playing with Spaceball dolls and like basically acting out the scene of the movie but making himself look cooler in the movie while he's like playing around with dolls on his deck or on his desk. And then Colonel Sanders opens the door and Lord Helmet like pulls all the dolls in and he goes, "Did you see anything?" And he's like, "Nope, definitely didn't see you playing with your dolls again, sir. You're needed on the bridge." And he's like, "Okay, I'll be right there. Knock next time."
Oh gosh.
And then we see in Spaceballs City, Scroob is told that they've captured the princess, so then he calls in to King Roland and tells King Roland he's going to reverse Princess Vespa's nose job if he doesn't give up the air shield combination. And at first Roland's like, "No, I would never." And Princess Vespa's like, no, Dad, it's okay. And then as he's going to like reverse the nose job, King Roland is like, no, the password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Scroob's like, "Hey, that's the same combination as my briefcase."
Oh no.
And then, so fortunately, Princess Vespa does not have her nose job reversed, and they head back towards planet Geridia, where they turn the Spaceball 1 into the Mega Maid, where she's like this big robot with a vacuum that they're putting over the air shield and then proceeding to suck out all of the air from Geridia as the Winnebago shows up, and Lone Star uses his newly formed Schwartz powers to turn the reverse suction on the vacuum so that the air gets blown back into Geridia. And then he gets onto, or they sneak onto the Spaceball 1, and Lone Star uses some scanning, like super secret scanning technology that's very similar to the Star Trek MacGuffin of like, we need to find where the plot is now because we're at the last half hour of our movie, so here's where we need to go button. And then Lone Star jumps off the ship, and then he sneaks onto the base where he tries to do the Vulcan like sleeper move on this guy's shoulder, and he goes, no, if you're trying to do that, you got to go a little bit lower. And then so he's like, "Oh, thanks," and then he goes a little bit lower, and then the guy passes out. And then he goes to find the self-destruct button, and there's a guy guarding it who's like, "Hey, is that you?" Whatever the guard's name was. And Lone Star finds Spaceballs, the shaving cream, and throws it at the guy and knocks him out. And as he's going to hit the self-destruct button, Helmet shows up to try and stop him, and then that's where we get the rings turn into the lightsabers. And so they're like, "I see Yogurt has taught you the ways of the Schwartz, but has he taught you how to wield it?" And then they both have a moment where both of their Schwartz turn into like lightsaber-y type rings, and then you get the line, "I see your Schwartz is bigger than mine." Well, no matter, it only depends on how you use it. And so then they have very goofy scene where the Schwartz the lightsaber things get like wrapped up with each other and like shenanigans ensue. But Lone Star manages to use, I think it's like a Cracker Jack box or something that has a mirror in it that he deflects light that hits the self-destruct button, so then the Mega Maid is set to explode. And they get Vespa and everyone off the ship, they deliver her back to her people, and then they fly off, and you find out that Lone Star didn't take the money because he's in love with her. They took enough money for lunch and gas, and that's it. And then the Megamade exploded in the air, and as they were trying to get away, and the Lord Helmet, Colonel Sanders, and Rico fly off into the distance, supposedly never to be seen from again. Though they do end up on an alien planet that has like a Planet of the Apes reference in it out of nowhere towards the end of the movie. And then Lone Star and Barf learn that Pizza the Hut died eating himself to death because he got stuck in his limbo for an extended period of time. Oh. So they don't owe $1 million and they won't get turned into pizza cheese. So everything's coming up Lone Star. And then Vespa learns that learns about the fact that Lone Star didn't want to take the money. And there's a quick scene out of nowhere in a restaurant that has a guy that has, it's the same guy who had the alien jump out of his chest in the movie Alien. They just have the scene in this movie where he starts to feel weird, falls over, and then the little alien baby pops out of his stomach, and then the little alien baby sings the "Hello, my baby, hello, my dolly." And it's just like out of nowhere, but I love it so much because it's so silly, and I get that song stuck in my head a lot. And then Lone Star and Barf decide to run away because they're like, there's an alien jumping out of people's stomachs from the food here, so we should leave. So they split the fortune cookie open, which then causes a vision of Yogurt to show up, who tells Lone Star that he actually is a prince and that he could in fact marry the princess. So the last scene is him going back to Princess Vespa stopping the wedding and saying, "No, I'll marry you." And then they get married and they fly off in the Winnebago with a message that says, "May the Schwartz be with you."
How nice. Wow.
And that's the movie. That's so fun.
Good. Those names are something else.
They're pretty solid. I enjoy them. There's Commodorette Zircon in there somewhere. They have major asshole and minor asshole in there.
Oh no.
There's a Star Trek reference with Scotty/Snotty, like Beam Me Up Scotty, but instead his name's Snotty. They have so many of these like one-off gags in there that are just clear references to other media.
That's very good. Mm-hmm. It seems also like a very Mel Brooks thing to do.
Yes, it's a very Mel Brooks. It's like the height of Mel Brooks comedy. It's got a bunch of like very hilarious lines. Like one, like even in the future, nothing works, and just it's a very quotable movie, and I love it. It's very silly.
I like it. Very good.
All right,
you got some questions?
I do. I got two. So Mel Brooks asked George Lucas if he could make the Spaceballs as a parody of Star Wars, and George Lucas agreed under what stipulation? That they did not include the Millennium Falcon in the movie, Lone Star was not dressed like Han Solo, or they used a Planet of the Apes reference.
I feel like maybe he can't be dressed like Han Solo?
Yeah, so they were trying to get over the Han shot first situation of Han being like a villain, so they just wanted to have anything that Han Solo was shown in good light. So instead of dressing him like Han Solo, they dressed him like Indiana Jones.
Nice.
And then the Lone Star and Barf's ship is a Winnebago chieftain that flies through space. What's its name? Is it the Bebop, the Serenity, the Eagle 5, or the Millennium Falcon?
I think it's the Eagle 5.
It is.
Yeah. I actually recognize all those other ship names from other things. Yay!
Awesome. And that's what I have for you.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing yet another space-related thing to our podcast.
I have a theme and it is space.
It's a good theme.
I just really like space.
You just really like space, man?
I just really like space, okay?
No, it's very good. You'll probably know where my quote comes from in that case. So let me read it to you. It's a very profound quote, so get ready to have your mind blown.
I am ready.
All right. Everybody, get up. It's time to slam now. We got a real jam going down.
I know where this is from.
Or alternatively, there's another part of this whole thing that I can read to you. It is, come on and slam, and welcome to the jam.
Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. Yeah.
So I take it you know where this is from, but
I almost did that one for this podcast. But...
I was really worried that you were going to, and then my quote would match it, but anyway, we'll let our listeners guess and tweet at us if they have guessed it already. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then I'll have you reveal the answer at the end.
Sounds lovely.
And until then, I'll talk to you about my thing, which is La La Land.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I have not seen La La Land.
You've not? Oh, interesting.
I have not.
Oh.
I've heard really good things about it. It's just one of those ones that I missed in life.
Yeah, well, I think that you'd like it, much as you think that I'd like Star Wars.
Excellent. I am excited to hear about it.
Yes. So it is a musical that was not on Broadway, but just made as like a movie first, but it's all like musical-y. The premise is kind of like it wants to evoke like old Hollywood charm kind of, but in a modern setting. And it features the famous actors Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
Right on. Together
again on the big screen. So this was I believe a 2016 film. Yep, 2016. Shot in LA, California, Los Angeles, hence La La Land. And I will now tell you about its plot.
All right, I'm excited.
Right. So where I got it to be, one of the reasons why it goes with jam is the first scene is this big opening musical number. We start with this huge traffic jam on the highway, one of California's famous traffic jam highways. And we're kind of like panning down the line of vehicles and like everyone's listening to like different genres of music. And then we kind of like zoom into one particular car and the driver of the car starts singing. And then like everybody in the different cars, they like start getting out because the traffic's at a standstill and they just start dancing around on the cars. And it's this big, huge thing. And it's this huge production. They actually had to close the carpool lanes of a certain highway for 2 days to film this.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, and they actually, the carpool lanes that they had gotten permission to close, they were facing, or the direction of traffic was going away from LA, but they wanted the direction of traffic to be going towards LA.
I see, okay.
Because it's like, here we're all going into the city for work. So they had to like get all these cars reversed up the ramp, essentially.
Oh, God.
But it's a really compelling scene. It's real fun. The music's great. And actually, the song there is called Another Day of Sun. Kind of talking about how, like, LA, like, you have these dreams, but they're probably going to get crushed. But don't worry, it's always sunny in LA. And then at the end of it, we kind of zoom into another car, and it is Emma Stone, and she's she's rehearsing lines.
Okay.
And like at first we kind of think that she's just talking to somebody because she has her phone up to her ear and she's like having this dramatic conversation, but then she forgets what she's supposed to say and we see her like looking at a paper. She's like, oh yeah, it's this one. And then traffic actually starts moving, but she's focused on what she's doing. Someone's honking in the car behind her and drives past and they flip her off. It actually turns out that it's Ryan Gosling who does this. And she's like saying, what a jerk. Oh, but wait, I actually should drive now. Yes.
We meet for the last time for the first time.
Yes. So she drives on to work and she works in a coffee shop on the Warner Brothers film lot. So she's kind of like immersed there in the scene, but not actually an actress in this world.
Okay.
And then her alarm goes off on her phone. She's like, I have to leave. I have to go to my audition. Her boss is like, you didn't tell me that. You'll have to make up the hours some other time. She's like, I promise I will. Mm-hmm. Wink. who knows if she's actually going to. Obviously, she's not invested in this coffee shop job. She wants to be an actress while she's in LA. So she's rushing out the door, and just as she's about to, someone runs into her with their coffee, so now she has a stain on her white shirt that she was going to wear to the audition.
No!
I know, the worst! And she goes to the audition, and it doesn't go well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, someone, like, interrupts it and, like, asks the casting director, like, do you want a sandwich? And then, Mia, who's the character that Emma plays, Mia's like, okay, what? What's going on? And then the casting director's like, okay, you can start again. Oh, actually, no, I think we've seen enough, and just, like, kind of dismisses her. And so it was, like, this really bad audition. She, like, flopped it really bad, and she has a stain on her shirt, and she walks out into this hallway with a bunch of other actresses auditioning for the role. They all have, like, her iconic red hair. They're all wearing the same costume, but none of them have stains on their shirt. And she, like, gets in the elevator with, like, 5 other people who look exactly like her, and she goes home.
Oof.
Real sad.
Saddest of days.
Very saddest of days. And then we see her back at her apartment. She's, like, kind of dreamily, like, kind of just getting ready for the night, basically. She's blissfully looking out the window and, like, wiping steam off of her mirror in the bathroom. And then all of her roommates burst in. They're getting ready to go out, because apparently there's a party at, like, some big shot producer's house, and somehow they got on the invite list. And they're like, come on, Emma, you should come with us. Or Mia, I'm sorry. Mia's the name of the character.
I understand. I do that too.
Yes. And she's like, no, I just had this really bad audition. I just want to stay here. And they're like, but wait, maybe this could be the one. This could be the break we need. And this is where we have the song Someone in the Crowd, which, as the name would imply, it's like you're just someone in the crowd until someone discovers you. Which kind of it's similar to the Another Day of Sun, where it's like, it's just, another day in LA until something happens.
Right.
And she's, like, thinking about it. She doesn't really want to go, but then she decides she really should go, and, maybe she'll meet the person she needs to meet to hit it big into the industry. And she goes to the party, and it's like, you can tell she's not really having fun. There's just, like, a bunch of people who are, like, moving around trying to make connections, but she's, like, sad and in her own little world.
Fair, she had a bad day.
I know, right? Now she's been forced to go to this party she didn't really want to go to, so she just kind of decides to leave. So she's walking out to where she parked her car, but then it's been towed because she accidentally parked in a no parking zone.
The worst of the worst days.
So she's like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna walk home. Which, she's wearing heels and a dress in LA. Nope. Like, I don't think that is a good combination, but okay.
Right.
So she starts walking. And she is walking past this nightclub, and she hears this magical piano solo kind of coming out of the nightclub, and it really intrigues her. It's like this very beautiful piece. And she just, like, walks into the nightclub to see, like, what is it? Who's playing this beautiful music? And it's Ryan Gosling. He's apparently a pianist. And she, like, just kind of stops in her tracks and is admiring the music. And then suddenly, like, kind of coming out of one of the notes that's held in the melody, like, in the distance we hear this car horn kind of coming in, and we snap back to the beginning of the movie. Except this time it's from Ryan's perspective. His character is Sebastian. And so we see him, he's honking his horn at Mia, and at the same time, he's also, like, fiddling around with his cassette tape player in his car. He has this really old car, and he's playing with this cassette player that has, like, this jazz piano piece playing on it, and he's trying to, like, dictate this piano solo, but he has to keep rewinding so he can hear all the right notes. And he's doing this in traffic, and it's not safe at all. But whatever. So he drives, and he drives to this place that says it's a tapas bar. And he's really mad at this place because it used to be this famous jazz club that, like, was the pinnacle of jazz in LA, and it got shut down, and now it's a tapas bar. And he's like, they don't even do tapas right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so he's all mad about that. But apparently he goes there and, like, buys coffee from the coffee shop across the street every day and just, like, sits in the parking lot and stares at this place. Like
what
some kind of
weirdo.
creepy stalker. Exactly.
What a creeper.
Yeah. And then later he drives on home. He comes into his apartment. And it's, like, kind of a rundown, shabby-looking apartment. Like, really not the greatest place. And he gets scared when he comes in the door because his sister is there, just kind of, like, rummaging through his stuff. And she's like, come on, Sebastian, I need you to, like, pull your life together. You're living paycheck to paycheck, and, like, you know you're never going to hit it big at this point. And you're driving without insurance, she says. Which I don't know why that's so important to have been put in the line, but
who hasn't, though? I mean, come on.
So anyway, he's like, I don't care. I need to be true to my art. And she's like, I have someone that I want you to meet. And he says, does she like jazz? And she's like, probably not. And he's like, then what will we talk about?
Oh.
And he sits down at the piano and, like, starts trying to play this jazz solo that he was listening to earlier, and his sister's just like, oh, whatever, and leaves in a huff.
Oh.
And then later, he's getting ready to go to his nighttime gig, which is not a gig that he likes by any means, but it is still, he's playing piano. So he goes to this, like, kind of fancy restaurant, and he's just like, you know when you go to some places and they have just, like, a piano player in the background for ambiance? Yeah. He's like that kind of thing. And it's Christmas time. So he's forced to play this book of Christmas songs, and he hates it because he's like, they're so unimaginative.
Fair.
Yeah.
I imagine that there's, like, a series of songs that most musicians do not want to play in.
Yeah. And Christmas songs are right up there, for sure. And so his boss is like, all right, so remember, you're going to stick to the book, right? And he says, yes, I am going to stick to the book. Apparently,
totally plans to stick to the book.
Totally going to stick to the book. And he says something like, can I throw in, like, one piece of jazz, but for every 2 pieces I play from the book? And the manager's like, you will play everything from the book. And he, like, tries to bargain. And in the end, he's like, all right, so it's settled. I'll just play by the book.
Oh.
In kind of, like, a very sarcastic way. And the manager, like, this is your last chance. Don't mess up. So he sits down at the piano. He, like, sets his little tip jar out, and no one is paying any attention. He starts playing, like, one of the Christmas songs and looks around, and, like, nobody is even acknowledging he's there. And he just kind of, like, starts randomly adding in, like, some little jazz riffs here and there until finally he's doing his full-blown solo, in which case we meet back up with Mia.
Okay.
Where she's now just come into the bar, and she sees him, like, playing this, and she's mystified. And then the manager comes over to him. This is all from Mia's perspective. And you see them, like, having a conversation, and Sebastian just, like, closes the book and gets up from the piano, and the manager, like, walks away in a huff. So you can tell he's just been fired.
Right.
But Mia insists on, like, kind of walking up to him, and she, like, starts to say, like, I was just walking by and I heard you play, and I just wanted to, you know, whatever she's gonna compliment him on. And he just, like, brushes past her, like, shoves onto her shoulder, and, like, such a jerk, really.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh,
jerk,
okay.
Move, Ryan Gosling.
Right?
Jerk, move.
Right? So she's all put out by that, obviously. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the end of all that scene.
Okay.
We then go on to the next season. So that was winter. Then we're into spring. So then Mia, she's still auditioning for roles. We're seeing, like, a montage of different things, and she's, like, not really successful for any of them, we can tell. I think she's doing better than she did in the first scene that we saw, but still just not really doing great. She winds up going to another party at some high-up's fancy house, and this time it's a pool party, like an 80s-themed pool party.
That actually sounds really rad.
You know, it looks pretty fun, I'll say. And she is introduced to a guy who's apparently a writer, like a screenplay writer, and he's just all about like buzzwords and like, yeah, we're really going to innovate the industry, and I have some really exciting stuff here, and if someone would just, take me seriously. And Mia's just like, I am not amused by this at all. So she gets up to get a drink, and as she goes over there, like the bar is by the band, this 80s cover band. And she sees on the keys, on the keyboard, is Mr. Sebastian. And they're asking for song requests. And so she requests him to play the song I Ran, which apparently has a really stupid keyboard part. I don't know the song very well, so I don't know what makes it stupid.
I ran so far away.
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it does.
And so she forces him to like play this because she requested it, and she like has this cocky smile at him. Later during the party, when the band is like on break, he comes and finds her, and he's like, so I remember you now, and I guess I was a little bit rude that night, but in fairness, I was having a bad time.
Okay.
It's like everyone was having a bad time. Come on.
It was a bad day for everyone. Get your crap together, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. And he's wearing like this really dumb like costume that makes him look like a fireman.
Oh God.
And she like critiques him on that, and she's like, so you're so high and mighty as a serious fireman and serious pianist? And he's like, oh yeah, well, what do you do? And she's like, I'm an actress. He's like, oh yeah, well, what are you in? And she's like, well, nothing yet. I work at the coffee shop on the Warner Brothers lot. And he's like, well, you can't talk down to me. Come on. And then the band goes back for another set, and that's the end of their conversation.
Okay.
Well, as they're leaving, it just so happens that they're leaving at the same time. At this point, Ryan has changed out of his fancy 80s getup, and he's now just wearing like his regular suit. He's one of those guys. He wears a suit.
I have many questions. One is, why is his 80s costume a fireman outfit? And then two, why would you wear a suit all the time? Just, okay.
I think he wears a suit all the time for the nostalgia. Like hashtag jazz era. He wants to fit that aesthetic kind of thing.
All right, I'll allow that. Cause
as for the costume, I don't know.
Just sus choices all around, sir.
Absolutely. So anyway, they're in line for like the valet parking, but Ryan's ahead of her. I keep saying Ryan, I mean Sebastian. Mm-hmm. So Mia's like, hey, piano man, grab my keys. He's like, oh, okay, fine. So
that's her clever line, piano man. Okay.
Yeah. So they grab their keys, but Mia doesn't know where her car is because it was valet parking to begin with.
Uh-huh.
So they're like walking up this huge hill. It's actually filmed on the hill up to Griffith Observatory. I don't know if you've ever been there.
I have not, but I've heard of Griffith Observatory.
Okay. It's like on top of this big hill outside of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And like the hill to get up to it is steep.
Okay.
So anyway, they're like walking up this hill.
I would die is what you're telling me.
It. Yeah. You don't have to walk up it, but they were walking up it to find the car.
So they were dying.
But they weren't. They weren't, though.
It must be nice to be in shape.
Hollywood magic.
It must be nice to be in shape and have the beauty of Hollywood pausing, and then when you are dying, just wait till you stop dying.
Yes, yes. So it's sunset, and they're like looking out over the city, and that's when our next song of the musical comes in, which is A Lovely Night. And Sebastian starts with, it's a waste that we're looking at this beautiful view, and would be so romantic, but it's just us and we hate each other.
Right.
Through
friends
more
or enemies to lovers, you say.
Oh yes. You like that trope? Is that your favorite? So throughout this entire song, there's like the song and dance, and basically it's hashtag musical, where throughout that is where they fall in love, essentially.
Okay.
No real character development. It just, suddenly they're now in love. Uh-huh. And they're like about to lean in for a kiss, and then Mia's phone goes off. Mm-hmm. And it's this guy, Greg, who's apparently her boyfriend.
Oh, okay,
And
Greg.
she's like, oh, sorry, Greg. Yeah, I'm coming. And Ryan's like, oh, okay, fine. So Mia then finds her car immediately. It was like right behind them from where they were dancing.
Very convenient.
Well, they were all surprised. They're like, oh, it's right here. Like, they were surprised about it too. It wasn't just like, oh, musical convenience.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And so Mia drives away, and then Ryan's like all wistful, like, oh my gosh, she's the girl of my dreams.
Oh boy, buddy.
In the next scene, Mia is back at the coffee shop and, just doing her job. There's annoying customers, and like someone is demanding a refund for something that they thought they had ordered gluten-free, but it wasn't, and she's
one of those.
mad about it. It just, a Karen, a real Karen.
Got it.
Yep. And then Ryan, like, runs up to the bar and, like, suavely, like, puts his hand on his chin on his hand. Is like, hello.
Oh.
And Mia's like, how did you get here? This is the Warner Brothers lot. He's like, I just, like, sped past the guards. They're probably chasing me right now.
Oh, it's fine. This is fine. Good choices.
Yeah, and she's like, you should probably go. He's like, yeah, maybe, but, like, I wanted to see you.
Oh.
Yeah, so at that point, he invites her to, like, come talk with him, and she's like, I'm on work right now, but I'll come meet you, and I have a break in a few minutes. And he's like, okay. So then they go walking on the Warner Brothers lot, and she's like, look, that's the window where they filmed some famous kiss scene, and that's where Humphrey Bogart filmed this scene.
Aww.
And he's like, wow, you must really like this stuff. And she's like, yeah, I do. I really want to be an actress. All this time, she's like not talking about jazz at all.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I like jazz. And she's like, yeah, but like, jazz is lame. I don't understand jazz. And he's like, come with me right now. So he whisks her away to this little jazz bar, a different jazz bar than the one that he goes and stalks on the daily basis. This is
the one we
that's
stare at like a weirdo. Okay.
Yeah, this one is actually functioning.
Okay.
And so they go into this jazz club, and here's another instance of jam. They're having a jam session.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So it's this jazz quartet that's playing, and he's like explaining jazz, and he's like, it's so thrilling. Like, they didn't have any way to communicate to each other back in the day, so they like had jazz, and there's all these improvisations, and everyone's like pushing and pulling, and it's a revolution, but it's dying, Mia, and we have to care, we have to save it. And she's like, okay, but like, what about Kenny G? He's like, what about Kenny G? And she's like, Kenny G, elevator music. We put on jazz when people wanted to have a cocktail party just in the background so we could ignore it. He's like, that's not what jazz is. And he's having like this existential crisis about it. And then they're like talking some more, and she's like, I don't know if I'll ever really like jazz. But he then invites her, let's go see a movie. We're gonna go see Rebel Without a Cause. It's apparently playing at this, like, old movie house.
Okay.
And she's like, yeah, okay, I'd love to, because I've never seen it. So, it's a date! Yay!
Yay!
So then after this...
What happened to Greg?
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
You hold on to that thought.
I will hold on to that thought.
First, we have to have another musical break.
Fair enough.
This is where Sebastian is walking on the pier at sunset, and he's all in love, and he sings the next piece, which is City of Stars.
Okay.
And it's basically like, this is a great place. I'm having a good time right now. Stars are shining brightly.
We're in the happy part right before the sad part.
Well, kind of. Except it's a weird song because, like, it's all happy-like, but it's in a minor key.
Oh, okay.
So, like, it sounds sad, but it's really not.
It's kind of melancholy. Got it. Ennui. Yeah. Ennui, I think, is the right word.
Exactly. Mia, then, she gets a phone call that she's actually got a callback for one of the shows. Whoa. And she's so excited, but then she gets another phone call that's, sorry, we picked someone else. So she's all sad and depressed, driving around the streets, and she passes by the theater where the movie's supposed to be. It's called the Rialto. And she's like, oh yeah, that was tonight. I'm so excited. So she goes on back home and she's like getting ready, picking out her dress and everything. And then one of her roommates comes in and is like, hey, Greg is here. And she's like, Greg? Oh, okay, Greg. And he comes in, he's like, hey, you ready for dinner? Apparently they're going out to dinner with Greg's brother who's just come back from Shanghai.
Oh.
So she's like, oh yeah, I promised this. And she's like, oh, I should call Sebastian. Oh wait, I don't even have his phone number.
Good job.
Yeah. So there's no way to tell him, like, sorry, I won't be able to make it. So she's just gonna plan on ghosting him, essentially.
Oh no, rude.
So, I know,
rude lady.
Right? Well, hold on here.
Okay.
So she goes on the date with Greg, and she's just like sitting at the table, and the brother is being all like he answers the phone at the table for his work and like starts talking in Chinese, and then like they start talking about all sorts of like financial things, and they're like, oh, like
lame sauce.
We're doing all this fancy stuff, and like all these artistic people, like how are they helping the economy? And Mia's just like sitting there in silence, being like, you're literally bashing the arts in front of me, who wants to be an actress, and like I'm sure I can contribute something. Right. And she just kind of like stands up and she's like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. And she goes running through the streets, and there's cherry blossoms floating down, and it's all magical. And she runs from the restaurant going towards the Rialto, and she gets there right as the opening credits are rolling. And Ryan has certainly thought that she is going to ghost him.
Oh.
She goes up to the front of the movie theater so that she can like see where he is. I don't know why she had to do this, because there's not very many people in the theater, so she could have easily just like quickly looked at everybody as she came in.
It's a grand romantic gesture.
I suppose so. So anyway, he sees her and like gestures her over, and they go sit next to each other and hold hands, and it's so cute. But then there's something wrong with the film. Like it's this like old actual film.
Okay.
And it like in the middle of one of the scenes like kind of like burns up or something. I think like it melted or something in the projector. Really sad. And so like everyone gets up and they start leaving, and Ryan's like, oh, but I have an idea. And so they break into Griffith Observatory. And like I don't know how they thought this would be a good idea for a date, but they like go in one of the back doors and it's just magically unlocked. And suddenly they're in the observatory. They go into part of the observatory is like this huge planetarium kind of thing where they have like star shows. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have one of those, and they like magically drift up into the sky, and they like dance in the sky, and it's all magical. Okay. And then they finally get to kiss.
Aww.
So she has officially dumped Greg and is now with Sebastian.
Hooray.
Aww. So now we move on to the next season, which is of course summer, and this is a lot of kind of like montage of like little cute things that they're doing, little dates that they're going on. And like Sebastian is like kind of working up his jazz skills. He's actually sometimes subbing in with a little jazz quartet that they'd gone and watched. And then he's actually encouraged Mia to quit her job at the Starbucks or at the coffee shop and write a play for herself. Like she doesn't have to wait for a role. She can write a play for herself. So that's what she's doing. And they actually move in together, and super cute, and seems like everything is perfect. One day, they are at the jazz club, and they're just kind of like sitting down after Ryan has played one of the sets, and an old friend of Ryan's from school comes up. His name is Keith. Keith is played by John Legend, except he doesn't play a pianist in this. He plays a guitarist, so he had to learn how to play guitar for this particular movie.
Okay.
Also, Ryan Gosling had to learn how to play piano. He played all the piano in it himself. He didn't have any like stunt doubles. And apparently John Legend was really jealous that he was able to like learn all of this piano within like 2 months essentially.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like he like was a proficient at all piano. It was just like the specific piano he had to play here.
Yeah.
But still, you know,
that's still impressive
nonetheless. It's a lot of playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, John Legend comes up and he's like, I might have a gig for you. I'm starting a new band and I need a keyboardist. Would you maybe be interested in it? And Sebastian's like, oh, I don't know. It's not really jazz. I want to do real jazz and I want to open my own club. So he's like, well, think about it. Get back with me. Mm-hmm. We then go back to their little apartment and Mia's talking on the phone with her mom, and she's like, yeah, he's gonna open his own club. I don't know when, but eventually he's going to. Mm-hmm. And he's kind of like overhearing this conversation. He's like looking at his shabby little apartment. There's like a leak in the ceiling, and he's like, this is no life for my girl.
Yeah.
And he decides to go on and take the gig with Keith. So he shows up to the first band practice, and it's not like his classic jazz that he's used to. It's like this really modern jazz that like kind of is a mix of rock and pop and jazz, and I think it actually sounds really cool.
As jazz tends to do, because it evolves, because it's jazz.
Exactly. But he's like not really sure he's into it, but he's like, it pays money and it's what I need to do right now.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what you gotta do.
Yeah. Sometimes just gotta get the job. So that's what he's done now. The band is actually getting really successful, and Mia goes to like their opening show, and she's seeing like all these people like just loving this whole show, and she sees like, wow, he's like really popular. This is great. Mm-hmm. And then they go on tour, and she's still like at home by herself getting her show ready, and this is kind of like where we start seeing things are getting a little bit rocky for them. Okay. So she's like calling him, and she's like, I really miss you. I'm not really sure where you are right now, but if you get this, call me back if you can. Mm-hmm. And then she goes into the apartment, and magically he's there. Aww. He had a break, and so he decided to come home, and he's like tried to cook her dinner, and it's really nice. Aww. And he's like, so I was thinking maybe you could prepare for your show on the road with me. And she's like, I can't do that. And he's like, well, why not? You can do it anywhere. You just have to rehearse the lines. And she's like, but there's like all the backdrops and the props, and it's all here, and I can't go with you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, it's because you don't like what I'm doing. You don't like it when I'm more successful than you are. God. You liked it when you could be better than me.
Oh, jeez.
And she's like, no, it's not that at all. And so like they get into this huge fight, and he's baking this cake, and it starts burning in the oven, and the fire alarm is going off, and she like storms out of the building, and he's standing there in his kitchen with the smoke alarm going off, and it's just like real sad.
Yeah. Well, don't be stupid.
Right. But then we kind of flash on to the opening night of her show. Of course, he's supposed to be there, mm-hmm. But his band has decided, oh no, we have to take photos for promotional stuff right now. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I don't know if I can. I promised that I'd be at the show. And they're like, don't worry, it's fine. So Mia goes and does her show. She has like this little seat reserved for him. It has like a special little name on it. And she does her show, one women's show. She's the only one in mm-hmm. it. And there's only like 4 other people in the audience, and he's not there.
No.
And she like goes into the back after the show, and she hears some people outside the window like kind of giggling and saying like, wow, I can't believe like she finished it, or something like that. Just like something that makes her really sad. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like blatantly mean, just like kind of sad.
Yeah.
And she's like packing up and rushing out of the door or the back door, and he comes running around the corner like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I missed it. Why don't we go back in there and you could do it all for me again? Or like something along those lines. Like he's trying to make it up, and she's like, no, I'm done with Hollywood, and I'm done with this place. I'm going back home. So she like throws her stuff in her car and just like drives home. She's actually from Boulder City, Nevada. So it's I guess within a few hours driving distance of LA.
Okay.
So she arrives back home that night, and Sebastian's just home alone by himself. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they're like this for at least a few days, if not a few weeks, not speaking to each other. But then he gets a call on his phone, and he's like, no, she's not here. And he's like, yeah, I guess I can take a message. And we find out what the message is when he then himself drives to Boulder City.
Oh no. Uh-oh.
And so he's like outside her house in Boulder City honking his horn until like she comes outside the house because he didn't know really what house it was.
Uh-huh.
She's like, how did you find me? And he's like, well, I knew it was Boulder City and you said it was the house across the street from the library. So I found the library and I guess this is you now.
Is there only one library in Boulder City?
Apparently. I get the feeling it's kind of a small town, so there might only be one library.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's like, you got a kind of a callback. Not exactly, but there was a casting director who went and saw your play, and she loved it, and she wants to meet you for a role. And she's like, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. He's like, you have to. You have to give it at least a shot. And she's like acting all like, I don't think I'm going to. And he's like, well, I'm leaving for LA tomorrow at 8 a.m. and I will pick you up if you're out on the curb and we'll take you back there.
Okay.
And so he goes to her house the next morning. It's like 8:05 and she's not there. So he's about to like speed away. She's like, no, wait. And she like comes up with 2 coffees. She's like, I had to stop and get us coffee. He's like, okay, fine, get in.
Dramatic tension.
Right. So they drive on back to LA and she goes right into the casting director and she's like, so I don't have a script prepared. What do you want me to do? And the casting director is like, well, you wrote that whole play, so you're like a storyteller. So just tell us a story. So she has another song here, a solo song for her. It's called Fools Who Dream. And it's all about kind of like her past and like what inspired her to be an actress in the first place. And it was all from her aunt, who was also an actress. She apparently lived in Paris, and like then when she came back from Paris, she inspired Mia to like watch plays and write little plays when she was a little girl, and that's kind of where this all started.
That's real cute.
And it's super cute. And the casting director's like, all right, we will call you back in a few days. All right. So Mia and Sebastian, they drive back up to the bench where they were first singing Lovely Night. Mm-hmm. And it's the middle of the day now. It's not quite as romantic, but they're just like sitting there being like, so what's going on here? Mm-hmm. And Mia's like they, at this point, they kind of come to a decision, like they can't really be together because they both have different dreams at this point. And they're just like, they won't work together essentially. Sure. Because Sebastian, he really actually does want to kind of continue with this band for now. Yeah. And like Mia, if she gets this part, she's going to be off in Paris actually filming on site for this film. Mm-hmm. So they're like, we'll wait and see what happens. So apparently she gets the part. Oh, yeah. And then we kind of come back to, we skip fall in this with the seasons. We go back to winter.
Rude. Fall is
but
the
it's
best
actually
season.
Right. Well, it's LA, so they don't really get a good fall.
That's fair.
It's just hot or less hot.
I will forgive La La Land for that.
Okay. So it's winter, but 5 years later.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
We skipped a lot of falls.
And yes, a very lot of falls. So we see that it's the Warner Brothers lot, and Mia is actually being driven around in a little golf cart, and she stops and gets out and goes into the coffee shop, and she picks up her coffee, and she leaves a really nice tip for the barista, and she's like, thank you so much, like trying to be like the sweetest person.
Right.
Which, good on them for saying like, yeah, you could be nice to the service workers. Right. They're trying hard.
They're trying hard, and they probably also want to be an actress.
Yeah, so she's like real sweet to them, and the barista's like, oh my gosh, that was Mia. I met Mia. I served her coffee. And like made her day. And then Mia's going home. She has this like pretty nice house at this point. She has a daughter, and then her husband comes home, and they're going out on like a dinner date. Their daughter's like staying with the babysitter, and they're like, we'll be home soon, sweetie. And like, you can tell they're a pretty happy family, it looks like. Mm-hmm. So as they're driving home, like an hour passes by in time, they're driving home from their date. And they say, oh, there's traffic. It's another traffic jam.
Another one.
So like, let's just get off here, and we'll go get dinner, grab something to eat at a club. So they go and park, and they're passing this club, and they're like, hey, let's go check it out. As they're walking down the stairs, she sees this sign that is a design that she had made when she was with Sebastian, and it was Seb's place. And she's like, oh my gosh, he opened his own club. He's done it. Mm-hmm. So they go and like sit down in the audience. Her husband goes and grabs them drinks. And Sebastian, he like comes up and he's like introducing the set, and he sees her in the audience. He's like, and this is going to be a very special set. He sits down at the piano and he starts playing the same song that she had heard that first night when they first met and he was a jerk to her. Mm-hmm. And during this time, we kind of see like a flashback of like what their life would have been like if they had gotten together. Like, what if things had been different, essentially? Okay. And so what we see would have happened is Mia would have gotten the part to go to Paris, and Seb would have quit his job in the band and like gone with her, but he would have played in jazz bands there in Paris, and they probably would have had, you know, a child as well, and also probably been pretty happy, but, you know, things would have been different, essentially. And then we come back to the current moment, and they finish the piece, and, you know, they kind of smile at each other like, yeah, you know, it was really good knowing you. You were an important part of me during that time.
Oh.
And then Mia's to her husband like, we should go now. So they get up and leave. And it's kind of the end.
Oh. Not the happiest of endings.
No, it's a little unhappy. I think the first time I saw the movie, I saw it with my mom, and she's like, what'd you think of it? And I'm like, you know, it was really good, but I'm sad.
Yeah.
I'm really sad. Because, like, they should have... I don't know if they should have been together, because, like, it really didn't mesh that well together. They were just, like, two people who had big dreams, and they had some free time before their dreams set in, essentially. Mm-hmm. In the end, like, they both got what they wanted, so that's good. And it's all in La La Land.
All in La La Land.
Yeah. So, there we go. That was that.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yeah. I got some quotes, or not quotes. I have no quotes for you. Only questions.
Only questions, no quotes.
So, first question would be, what fun trick did Sebastian teach Mia to help find her car faster? Is it A, hit the panic button so it annoys everybody? B, hold the key fob under your chin and then press the unlock button? Or C, don't bother with it, just always go with the valet parking?
Hold the key fob under your chin?
Yeah!
What does that do?
Well, apparently it makes it more of an antenna, which I was reading somewhere online about this whole theory that as you're transmitting the radio waves from the key fob to the car, mm-hmm. it actually transmits better through water, and your brain is a lot of water, so theoretically it would make it transmit further if you held it under your chin and transmitted the signal through your brain, essentially.
Okay. Seems suspicious, but okay.
Yes. And then how many takes did it take for them to film the dancing scene on the ramp of the Griffith Observatory for the Lovely Night song? Was it all shot in one take? Did it take them 10 takes? Or was it 5 takes, but they actually took one of the earlier takes, not even the 5th one?
The 5, but they took the first take.
True. It wasn't the first take, it was the 4th take, okay. But yes. Yeah, they said they specifically had to film it, like, right at sunset, so they had 2 days set aside to film it. They only got 5 takes done in those 2 days mm-hmm. during the sunset hours,
okay.
where it was, like, the right lighting. Mm-hmm. And apparently they, like, just shot the whole thing, like, each take all in one take, no pauses.
Oh, wow.
And they basically just, like, took the 4th take. It was really good. I think they said they might have spliced in, like, a few little bits from other takes that were more perfect.
Yeah.
But overall, just solid one take kind of thing. So, yeah. That's all that.
Sounds delightful.
Yes.
A little sad, but it sounds like a fun ride.
A little sad. It's still good. Mm-hmm. I would say mostly not sad.
I I think I've heard some of the music now that you've given me titles of the songs, so I probably will go back and watch it.
It's a fun, mostly feel-good piece. Yeah. Probably not as funny as Spaceballs.
Probably not.
All right. Do you want my quote again?
It's Space Jam, come on and jam. Everybody slam.
Yeah. Yep, it's the lyrics to the song Space Jam from the movie Space Jam. Which I was thinking about bringing, but I haven't actually seen it since I was in first grade.
Oh, valid.
And I for some reason wasn't willing to find it.
Nope, that makes sense.
Not that I wasn't able to, just not willing to.
I understand. I kind of want to see the second one. I haven't seen the second one yet.
I've heard it's kind of silly.
Well, the first one's kind of silly, so.
I mean, even more, like, dumb, I guess?
Sure.
I don't know.
Understood.
Of course, see it if you want to. Who am I to tell you no?
I will.
Fine. All right. So, what is our next word?
The next word is council.
Council. Okay.
All right.
It's an interesting one. Sure, we'll come up with something.
I think I have the quote already. I don't know if I have the thing I want to do yet, but I have many. Probably space related, if anyone is surprised.
I challenge you to do everything space related.
I will do as many things space related as I conceivably can.
All right. Well, we'll see if I do anything space related. Cool.
Awesome. Be sure to let us know what you talk about with Jam. It's our 20th episode, so that's kind of wild.
Yay!
And let us, we're at Nerd of the Week on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag Nerd of the Week, or NOTWP, or Instagram if we ever do anything with it. Most of our stuff's up on YouTube, and be sure to share with a friend, because if you share with a friend, then we have one more listener, and we can tell you all about space all the time, and whatever else Allison brings to the table.
Soon we'll have as many listeners as there are stars in the sky.
That's a lot of people. I don't know if that's true.
We gotta get it.
Have you seen the new telescope? There's a lot of stars now. The James Webb Telescope showed a lot more stars than we were anticipating.
I know. We gotta get a lot more listeners than we initially set out for. But, listener, only you can make it possible. Make us have telescopic fame? Astronomical fame?
There you go. I like that one.
Fame for light years? That doesn't make sense.
I'm not going to try. Thank you for listening to our podcast and joining us on this adventure. And thank you, Wise Generator, for our next word. I apologize for screwing up my question at the beginning of this episode. And I think that's it. So as always, I've been Stephanie.
And I've been Allison.
And remember, this is not a pyramid scheme.
Never.
Goodbye!